We're going to start our panel at this point. This is the documentary, which is a little bit confounding for me because when we have a panel that's just around documentary, it's everything, right? It is Sherman's March, it is Thin Red Line, it is Nanook of the North, it is Animal Planet, and then we get to talk as if all four of your films are the same basic type or structure. So we're going to start off today talking about, I'd just like you all to introduce your films. Assuming that not everybody's been able to see everything, if you just give us like the elevator pitch or the log line of what your film is and who you are and what you did on it. What was your role? Kirsty.
Hi, I'm Kirsty Bell. I am the director of a documentary film called Don't Forget Me, Eddie Cochran, which is about Eddie Cochran, the rock and roll singer-songwriter and also film star, who died terribly and tragically in a car accident in the UK when he was touring on April 17th, 1960. So our film charts his life, involves a lot of reconstruction, and it also charts what happens to his music after he dies. So the third act is very much about legacy. So what it's about is that the person may pass away, but the music lives forever. So it's a lifetime of legacy as our log line.
My name is Mallory Golsky, and I am, my credit is cinematographer for a documentary called Free Beer Tomorrow, and it will screen on Wednesday, and it's all about Ohio's oldest and longest running lesbian owned and operated bar. It was open from the 1970s when it officially became a lesbian bar, which if you watch the film you hear a little bit about that, but then it was open until 2008 when it closed, and it's located in Columbus, Ohio. And it talks about, you know, the legacy of having a space like that, and all of the social movements that arose from that, and how that ripple effect, it wasn't just a bar, but it was more of a community center that allowed for so much progress to be made in Central Ohio and beyond.
My name is Adam Wild. I'm the director of a film called Slow Burn Shoot, an indie wrestling story. And our film is, it's a peek behind the curtain of the indie wrestling world shown through the lens of AIW, which is a Cleveland promotion. We follow the lives and the trajectories of several different wrestlers who are trying to break into the industry, who are established in the industry, or who have gotten bounced out of major promotions like WWE and are rediscovering their careers on the indies. It's really a character story of heart, community, tragedy, kind of just with a wrestling backdrop.
And my name is Mariah Norman. I'm one of the co-directors of And Again I Dream. It's a documentary short film about the life and legacy of a Black lesbian journalist, poet, and activist named Ivy Young. It centers around her archive and me as one of the initial people to find it, and my co-director as the friend that was left to take care of it. And it's about the radical process of remembering each other when institutions fail to, and what it means to cultivate learning and wisdom through the people that are left behind and the love that you shared in the movements that you were a part of. So it's really a kind of a peek behind it's showing someone that had their hands in every social movement she could be a part of, but maybe not her name or her face. So it's kind of a forgotten story that we're bringing to the limelight.
So you can see why all four of these films have something in common.
Legacy. Legacy,
Legacy,
there's
really.
legacy,
Yeah.
legacy. Yeah.
And I think that this is always part of the fun. Like I have that terror of when I'm watching these things, how are they going to connect? But legacy is part of it. Well, one thing's ready to go into. I also like the idea of authenticity. But Adam, you bring up a sense of legacy. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about the amateur wrestling in this area and what that meant to the guys that were involved with, and the guys and gals that were involved with it.
Sure. Indie wrestling is actually there's just an insanely passionate fan base across the country. So it's a pretty wild thing that I just happened upon. And when I walked into this, it was like, there's this guy named Johnny Gargano. He's in WWE now, but he's like a Cleveland legend. He came up through the ranks of Cleveland and this promotion, AIW. So my first show at AIW was actually his last show before he went up to WWE. So it was just like, the crowd was oversold, it was raucous, it was just insane, and it was in a church gymnasium with like house lights on. It was just like the most surreal thing I could step into. And then he put on the performance of a lifetime, and afterwards he gave this speech, this heartfelt speech. He was crying, the crowd was crying, and I was like, what is this? It's like 10 minutes from my house. I had no idea. So I wanted to dig in a little bit deeper, and come to find out that the AIW, this promotion, it's like the last check mark for indie wrestlers all over the country. It's the last check mark for them before they try to go up to AEW or WWE, which are the two major promotions. So it's like sitting in our backyard. It's this relatively unknown thing, and like throughout the country, it's looked at as this premier place to go to really fill out your resume in order to go on to the next stage of your wrestling career. So it's pretty fascinating. Thoroughly enjoyed the experience of being around these people, and in order to earn their trust, like I did a photo documentary project where I was just doing character portraits behind the scenes for a year. I followed them for a year at every single show that they did. And that's where I learned some of these stories. And when you say legacy, one of the promoters died under some very, very tragic circumstances. And I think what we really aim to do through this film is honor his legacy without being exploitative, because that's a really delicate dance, you know, where you want to like feature someone who has passed through their words and their experiences without being exploitative about it, and making sure that you're honoring that legacy.
Yeah, later on, I'd like to come back to that idea of the recreations that you were using to kind of represent him.
Oh, you saw the screener?
Oh, I did.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And, you know, we've got recreations kind of happening a couple of times here, so like we'll come back to that later. But
Sure.
Mariah, first I want like you are, the whole thing is about legacy. So can you talk to us about what you were trying to, like, what is the responsibility of creating a stronger sense of legacy for somebody who is important and seemed to always kind of be in the background but never in the foreground?
Well, my co-director just arrived, which is fun. It's okay. But legacy is really the driving core of this film, for sure. And I think one of the biggest ways that we were able to incorporate and honor her voice was by literally using her voice. We were lucky enough to have so much oral history that had already been collected. And oral history is such a fancy word for just talking about yourself and your life to the people that you love, and them caring enough to document and record that. And it's so rare that we view ourselves as important enough to do that while we're alive. And it's this very common experience of someone passing along and feeling as if the people that are left behind didn't truly know them, or everybody has these kind of fractured pieces of who they were, and it's only once they're gone that you put it all together. And I think this film was a huge undertaking to be able to piece together every bit of someone's life that she didn't share with everyone but existed, and the things and the materials, her photos, letters, you know, videos. Like, she had such a rich archive of movements and things that she was a part of. So I think that being able to trace that legacy across time and space is such a labor of love, and it's not something that we get to do very often for each other. And I always think about, in this digital day and age, like what that would look like to like put together your like Instagrams and stuff, like how we would replicate that experience. But I think it's an important lesson I learned by working on this film, of treating yourself as something that others can learn from in the future, and living your life as a dedication to the ones that will come next. Even if you might be sowing seeds that you don't necessarily get to reap the benefits of, still recognizing the importance of that, and the act of love that it is to make a future, and sort of that intergenerational conversation that happens there of me as the young person representing that future and carrying that baton forward was just a very deep honor.
So I want to bring it over now to you, to Kirsty, because you also you're celebrating the legacy of somebody in kind of a different way, because and I know Octavia Butler is referenced in it, but mostly it's people who are, again, have been marginalized, right? But now, like, the first person I think we saw was Keith Richards. So you're creating a legacy with people that a lot of us already recognize. So I want to talk about that, and then we'll come over and talk about how it's not so much about a person, but like a community in terms of the legacy. But Kirsty, can you talk to us about how you're preserving a legacy somewhat through his own voice, because you're doing some recreations, you're using his own words, but then also having these killer interviews with people that we've been watching for 40 plus years?
So I think you've got to go back to the title of the film. So the title's Don't Forget Me, and that's what Eddie Cochran used to sign his signature as. And the problem is that, especially in the US, less so in the UK, he was forgotten. The person was forgotten after he died, but his music wasn't. And 5 of his songs have been covered over 500 times. And it's a bit like when I speak to people, they go, oh yeah, the Sex Pistols wrote that song. No, they didn't. It was actually Eddie Cochran, which is Come On Everybody and something else. So when we started to put the contributors together, and Michelle, our EP's in the audience there, she helped a hell of a lot on this. We had an open door to some extent, that people were waiting for this first time ever documentary of him, because they all adored him. So when we interviewed Keith Richards, he came in the room and he literally grabbed a hold of me and hugged me and said, tell me everything about Eddie, I love Eddie. So it was more like the musicians were the ones that were carrying on his legacy, although the public had forgotten who that individual was. So what I tried to do in the film was bring Eddie back to life through the reconstructions using Jack Harris as Eddie, and using fan letters, you know, finding pieces of information to piece together his life from his family and the fan base. But it was really through the life of his music. And my favorite line in the whole film, and there's lots of them, but my very favorite line in the whole film is by Youngblood. So you're talking about, you know, a 66-year span here, and it's Youngblood, and he goes, it's when you realize that your idols had idols. So you're finding the path of legacy over decades of time. And that to me is wonderful, that you can uncover things, you can read things, and all of a sudden that person comes right back to life at the end of it, which is, you know, is beautiful in that respect. But yes, Keith Richards, Sting, Rod Stewart, Ronnie Wood, Brian Setzer, Linda Perry, John Waters, you know, there's 30 of them, there's a host of them, and it was so difficult picking the bits that we wanted to use for the film, because they all were just brilliant.
Yeah, I was a little heartbroken because, like, Steve the Colonel Cropper's in there for like 8 seconds.
And I
had
to get him in. I had to get him in there. But it was like the story I wanted to tell. There was, he said some brilliant things, obviously, you know, he wrote Sitting on the Dock of the Bay and all the rest of it. But it was like, what can I use from each of these interviews? And that, you know, he wanted to sit in that big blue chair. And it's just, you haven't seen it. It's on at the Rock Hall tonight. It was premiered last night. But it's at the Rock Hall tonight, and he sits in this huge blue rocking chair like that, and he does, because you can be remembered, and that's all he says in the thing. But he's in there, of course.
Mallory, so the last 2 films we've been talking about is more about individuals, right, and the legacy they're carrying through, but yours is more about, it's about the location, but really it's about the community. Mm-hmm. So can you talk to us about that idea of celebrating that community and what that place meant to the community?
Absolutely. So a lot of what Mariah talked about really resonates with my experience working on this film, because I am decades younger than many of the people who we interviewed, and I'm over here like, this is amazing, I want to hear all their stories, and I'm very invested because this is a community, this is like, a community and a time period that I reaped the benefits of as a queer person in Columbus, but that I never got to experience from the perspective that they're telling, right? And there's a quote from one of an interview we did at an event that was not like a sit-down interview. I was not looking for a soundbite, and it didn't actually make it in the film, but it's something that, it's a thread that has carried us through this project. And this person said, when an old person dies, a library burns to the ground. And you know, it's all these stories that, as you were saying, you maybe don't feel like your average Tuesday was all that important, but that it's significant in the grand scheme of history and culture and time and place. And that is a lot of what we ran into in doing these interviews. I mean, we did dozens of interviews with women who went to this bar every day. I mean, one woman in the interview says, in the film, she says that she would have gone 7 days a week, but they weren't open on Sundays, so that she didn't go. But she was there every other night, and it's because it was like a community center. A lot of folks said that this space was a community center that you could drink at, and a few other people described it as like a church. And it wasn't just this one-off soundbite, it was all these people resonating with that sentiment. And this place, it became like, you know, a lot of us, our third space right now is social media. Like, you come home at the end of the day, you open up Instagram, and that's where you're finding community. And as a younger queer person, like, I'm 28, this bar closed when I was in 5th grade, right? So I didn't get to go there. I don't really have these spaces in Columbus right now. And so I'm kind of finding that community on Instagram, and that's kind of a bummer, because all these people describe, like, they were teachers and they were grading papers at the bar. They were social activists and organizers, and they were coming up with these ideas on napkins. And it's because of those napkin ideas, it's because they had this common space to brainstorm and to come together, and just, maybe they were sharing a drink, maybe they weren't. Maybe they were just coming there because this was their safe space to be and their place to let their guard down and to ideate. And it's because of that that we have all sorts of organizations and institutions. And you know, one of the things that took place at this bar for many, many years was a Christmas show that they started doing, because there are women, or there are all these people who couldn't go home for the holidays because they weren't welcomed in their families. And so they just stayed open. They stayed open on Christmas Eve until the last person left the bar. I mean, that is just what the tradition was. And they would put on these shows to raise money for folks who are, you know, affected by AIDS, whether that was, you know, people themselves or children or their families, right? And they raised thousands of dollars over the years because they just did these Christmas pageants every year, right? And so there are people who are alive or who had a better quality of life because these people convened at this bar. And so this is a legacy that when we're talking to people in these interviews, I'm like, tell me these stories, how did that make you feel? And they were like, I don't know, it's just a Tuesday evening for me. You know, they didn't feel that their story was as important, and yet all these things wouldn't exist if not for this space.
So, like, part of the fun of this is that we have documentaries on so many different scales. Like, you're all pursuing a legacy, you're all pursuing some kind of authenticity, but we're talking about an individual, a smaller location, something regional, something international. And for each one of those projects, you had sites, you had goals, you had things that we need to incorporate. I guess what I'm really asking now to think about and share with us is, what are some of the production's problems that feel momentous, whether it's one person or 30 people that have been on the stage for 40 plus years? Like, what were some of the production challenges that you thought were worth the battle of going through?
Ours never got made. So we decided to make it. Ben and I decided, Ben, my producers at the back there, decided to make it. And we put an article out in Cannes that year in Variety to say that we were making this film. And then we got the most awful email from a lawyer lady in LA saying, how dare you, and you should be approaching the estate, and you should be doing this, and we're not letting you do this, and we're not letting you do that. And Ben and I thought, oh dear. And so we went to LA, and we met with her, and she's now our friend. She's called Cindy Levine, and she's like she was the lawyer on La Bamba. She's like, she's got balls of steel, excuse my French. And she loved the fact that it was a woman-led production. She loved the fact that Ben and I went to see her and we schmoozed her, but not just schmoozing her, talking to her about what we wanted to achieve, what we wanted to show. And the main thrust of it was, and we didn't know we were hitting the buttons that we needed to hit, was that we wanted the family to see that Eddie was going to be out there, because we knew there wasn't a documentary out there. And then she said, I think you should come and meet the family. So we arranged the following January. We flew on January the 2nd from the UK to Seattle, which is where his last remaining sister lives with her daughter. And they were overwhelmed. And we sat with them for, I think, nearly 3 days. And they gifted us a home video that had never been seen before at the end of that. So that was the main production difficulty. The others was, we were doing this coming out of a pandemic, the end of the full pandemic. And so all of these brilliant names were either scared of COVID still, or they were going on tour. And when musicians go on tour, they can't be bothered with anything else. So we were literally like the equivalent of an ambulance chaser. We were literally chasing these people again, and some of them were getting fed up of us chasing them. But it was really strange. It's a bit like raising money for a film. The first piece of money is always the most difficult to get. And once you've got that confidence of your first piece of money, the rest seems to follow. And that is exactly what happened. So for instance, Rod Stewart was booked in on the Friday. We got an email from Ronnie Wood's office to say, but you're interviewing Rod, so Ronnie wants to be interviewed on the Monday. So it was like, at some points we felt we weren't going to get the contributors, because for an international documentary like this, for distribution, you need the names. It's a bit like a feature drama, you know, who's your cast, what's your cast, etc. And that's our cast effectively. So we had to keep going and keep going. And to go on for that length of time, which is nearly 3.5 years to get this made, is a long time to keep going. And also to keep the thread of the story going and what you need from each of those people to say what they do. But we have great EPs, and the Rock Hall has helped us enormously as well. So yeah, that was our main difficulty, getting it off the ground in the first place.
You want to tell us about the challenge? Because you watch the documentary and there's a little bit of like, some people were very confident, and like some of it is also very much, we wanted this space so that we weren't really noticed. So can you talk about maybe some of the challenges you had, even though it's 40 years removed, there's still like there's some faces that are blurred out in the documentary.
Yes, oh, for sure. Yeah, when you talk about challenges, I mean, I have to start with the first interview that we did, which was in January of 2023. And we went to this woman's house, her name was Lee, and you see her in the film, right? But I, in that moment, was not certain that there would be a film or that she would make it in it, because we show up, I had my camera, and to be clear, like, this is our first film. The director, producer, and I, like, this is our first film. And so we had equipment that we had at home, and we're like, we're just gonna make it work. And we borrowed a camera from Ohio State. I think for that particular interview, I borrowed a camera from a friend, because I was like, I need a second camera, and you're available, can I borrow this? And we had this set of lights that had been sitting in my friend's basement for like the better part of 20 years. And we plugged them in, and it smelled like, you know, when you turn your furnace on for the first time in October, it was like that, but the lights were hot too. So we were like, is this gonna combust? And we did a lot of these interviews in people's houses. So we're like, hi, we're gonna show up and rearrange your living room. Hope that's okay. And this woman, then, this interview, she was, you know, very much of the, oh, my story is not important. Like, I just went to this space because that's where I had to be, you know, and she didn't see it as important. I'm like, no, how did you feel? Tell me how you, and she's like, I don't know, it just was fine, right? So the challenge of trying to, like, we go through this whole process, and then we're like, okay, we're gonna get the best soundbite because we know you have this amazing legacy, and they're just like not seeing that they were important and part of history. And I think as the project has progressed, people have started to realize, like, oh wait, I actually have a legacy. How cool is that? And these are people who were told by society, by their families, by, you know, other people in their life that, like, they had to hide this part of themselves, and if they revealed this part of themselves, then they might lose their job, or they might be, you know, estranged in one way or another. And then to be told, no, actually your story is important and people want to hear it, and then to then believe it too has been one of the challenges. But I would say, like, as far as challenges go, it really is just overcoming the, like, this is our first film. How are we going to do this? How do we fundraise? Wait, we actually need better equipment than the camera that I borrowed from my friend. How are we going to make that happen? And just kind of being scrappy and figuring it out as we go. And, you know, there's some people who you know, we did these interviews in their homes, and they were like, actually, this is the one spot that I will allow you in the home and nowhere else. And I'm like, okay, this light is not great, and what are we gonna do? And just figuring it out, because we can't just, you know, have a full-scale production studio or whatever for all of these interviews. If somebody agrees, like, okay, fine, you can interview me, and they say this is where it can happen, that's where it's gonna happen, and we're gonna make it do, so.
Adam, you've worked on a lot of films, so this is not your first rodeo. What was your challenge going in for this?
I wouldn't say actually I've worked on a lot of films. I would say that I've been in the commercial world for years. So I own a studio, I run a studio, I've been directing for years commercially, but I grew up in a studio, so like this was my first venture into a documentary where like I didn't have control, and I wanted to do it because I wanted to push myself and I wanted to not have control because I'm so used to controlling everything. So that was a problem, you know, not having control. I'd say my biggest thing was probably like time. Like this, I filmed over like 7 years, and you're just waiting for, like, of course I started before the pandemic, so there was that break there, but I was just waiting. I had a laundry list of people who I wanted to interview who were at the top levels, but they had contractual obligations that were keeping them from talking. So I had to wait for like a 2-week gap in their contract, you know, to be able to grab them and get their interview in order for them to tell me what their experiences were with this person who had passed and the promotion and all of that kind of stuff. So time was probably the biggest factor. I'm kind of in an opposite place where like you had like little to no gear, and I was like, I have all the gear and I have all the cameras and like I have all that stuff. I just don't have what I want to do right in front of me because I have to wait for these specific instances to happen in order to get these people. And like because it was so long, like there's a couple times where I was like, I don't know, maybe it's done, guys. Like, and then like luckily like Jeff Yall, he's the producer on the film. He's like, dude, we're gonna just chill out. It's done when it's done. We're gonna push forward. We're gonna get some more verite of these people. And then like through him pushing me, he not only reinvigorated my love for the project, because once you're in it, man, like especially over that long of a time period, you kind of want to get out sometimes. You just want it to be over. So he was amazing in just like reigniting my love and my passion for it, which led to some of the stories that now end the film. So like there's that one storyline of that person who passed that was my original ending, and then now that's like a bookend it's right in the middle, and it actually ties to our new ending, but our new ending I think is a lot more powerful. So I think I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't have been patient and just waited. And sometimes it really takes other people who believe in you to tell you to chill the F out and wait, because I'm not good at that.
Ryan.
I think some of the biggest production challenges for us were, because the film is so archival, it's kind of like at the same time you have way too much good stuff and also not enough. And so you have like a fixed amount of things and a fixed amount of time to put into your movie. Or I guess a fixed length that we had because we wanted to keep it as a short. And so we had all of these like rich videos and photos, and she went on a 10-day fact-finding tour with the Howard University radio station, and she was in Lebanon interviewing Palestinian refugees, and she was at a conference in the Bahamas with Octavia Butler and Sonia Sanchez and Lucille Clifton, and she has footage of all of them. And she dropped out of college and joined the Center for Black Education in DC and was trained by all these former activists and Ella Baker, and she was just in the mix. And so we're like, all of that has to go in, you know, no matter what, it's like everything has to go in, but how do we make it flow as a full story? And that all happens in the edit. And Flavia Romani was our amazing editor. And the three of us were like a true, the best team, honestly, you could ask for, of like just laboring over countless versions of the cut, because you know, it's less of getting footage and managing timelines and schedules in that way, and more so of managing materials and figuring out how exactly to play with them, to recreate text, and using her interviews and interlaying her voice in creative and funny ways, and running into challenges of like, oh, we don't have her saying "and" in the perfect way, or like we need a like, but not that kind of like, and you know, so it's a puzzle to be able to put all these things together when you have everything that you need, and yet it always feels like it's not enough. You just constantly want more. And we took multiple different trips of clearing out. If you watch the film, you'll see it's a very crowded basement of stuff, and then it becomes a very crowded room of stuff where we kept it all in its new home. And eventually it was donated to the Yale Beneke Rare Manuscripts Library, so the public will be able to access it and research it and use it in their own scholarship, which is an amazing life cycle for her work. But as far as the challenges go, it really is just trying to put all of it together, and that happens in the edit. So we were really grateful to have such an amazing editor and putting it into a well-formed piece for other people to follow in a way that made true to how we discovered it.
And with each one of y'all, there's such a strong sense of storytelling, right? There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, there's pathos, there's like the high points, there's the low points. But there's still this kind of, because it's a documentary, we want to be authentic to what happened with this person, with this institution, with these individuals. As you're trying to represent these people or this place, like how did you stay true to the authenticity of the moment? Because you do have some dramatic recreations and you have some archival footage, and then you know you've got kind of a mix of people going on to camera, but also these photographs from the past. Like, were there hard lines that you had set for this is part of what we will do for this film to make it feel respectable for the content? Were there things that you were surprised that you were like open to doing dramatic recreations? What was your idea of like, how am I going to represent these people or this person authentically?
The biggest challenge that we had in that process, that part of the process, was the fact that there's very little moving footage of Eddie Cochran in the world. And most of the moving footage that there is out there in the public domain. So how do you tell a story about somebody where there's very little about their life? And then, if you then did purely interviews, all you've got is 94 minutes of talking heads and a few pieces of moving imagery that people have seen and a few stills that people have seen. So to be gifted a small amount of home footage, that's great, but it doesn't fill 94 minutes. So the biggest issue or problem or hurdle that we and I had to overcome is, how can I story tell? I know the story I want to tell, but how the hell am I going to tell it? And that's when I came up with the idea of having a fake Eddie. And what I didn't want to have was a fake Eddie, as in somebody we've deliberately dressed in exactly the same clothes, we've deliberately dressed everything to be exactly the same as it was then. We wanted to bring Eddie, whoever Eddie was, and the essence of him to life for everybody today to fall back in love with Eddie and his music is the thing that everybody loves. So that's when we came up with the idea of this. We got introduced to Jack Harris, and originally I was just going to have him not speak or anything. He's actually a singer-songwriter himself. He's just been signed by Columbia, funny enough, so it's brilliant for him. And it wasn't then. And when we went to meet him in Lubbock, we got invited to be part of the Buddy Holly thing in Lubbock, Texas. We filmed him there and realized that he was actually really good. And then I came up with the idea of scripting Eddie's voice over the whole of the film. So instead of employing a narrator that you might recognize, it was going to be Eddie over the whole of the top of the film. So I pieced together a script which has a little artistic licensing, but has its essence and foothold in all of the newspaper articles, all the books written about him, all the things family told us about him, or people who actually knew him. So that is how the film developed into a much bigger, more of a, I think somebody called it a biodoc instead of a biopic, because that sort of took over the storytelling. And I just forgot when you asked the other question, I think the biggest hurdle that we've had is clearing all of the archive for licensing and the music. Because he did his music in the 50s and finished in the 60s, the trail of ownership of music rights is just like bonkers. It's like the worst kind of jigsaw / mind map you'd ever come across. And it's taken us nearly a year to clear all of the archive and the music licensing. So that was one of our biggest things. I forgot about that because it's too new. But I think when you're a storyteller, it doesn't matter whether you're making a drama feature or a documentary. A documentary is a story about a person or a place or a gathering or a movement or whatever you pick. So it's still the same storytelling as you apply. And I sort of, it's funny because when Ben talked to me about being the director on this, I'd just done my directorial debut of a feature drama. And I was like, well, how does he think I can, I've produced documentaries, how does he think I can direct that? And it's because it's the storytelling and the emotional element that needs to come out. And we had to piece together archive from fan letters that we were gifted and stories that we were told. And that is what I think is a more complex procedure in documentaries. You're not just given a script and you're directing that script. The way you edit that script is up to you and how you tell that story eventually, but a documentary evolves from the things that you find out from people as well. Contributors won't say what you want them to say. They'll say whatever they want to say. And some of that will change the direction of what you're telling.
I had a teacher who called documentary packing a parachute and hoping it deploys. And that is largely what you find as you're doing the interviews. Just say this, oh no, that's actually better, now I gotta do a lot more work.
And a lot of the stuff that we developed later on came out of answers that we'd got from people before. And there's one thing, not to spoil it, but over the end credits, we ask everybody the same question and we get their responses, and some of them are hilarious, like, oh, I don't know what the answer to that is. And we ask them what their Don't Forget Me is, because that's what he signed. And that was the most interesting part, because we never told them we were going to ask them that question, so we got natural responses from them. So that was quite cool as well, and that added extra.
Adam, you also used an actor to play Biggins, so and it was, I feel like it was a little different because while you weren't trying to hide it was an actor, and like you can't because not 1950, it was interesting how you kind of framed him specifically in the beginning and intercutting it with the still photos you had of him.
Sure.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to have access to over 100 hours of podcasts that he and the other promoter did together that talked about the inside baseball or making a sausage of independent wrestling, their promotion. There was a lot of anecdotes, but I had to go through 100 hours of podcasts multiple times to find sound bites of Chandler talking about the things that we're talking about in our film. And like we had overarching things like, I want to talk about the school, I want to talk about how AIW was formed, I want to talk about anecdotes with these specific wrestlers. So like I had things I was looking for, I had things I was targeting. So I just listened and listened and listened, and it's so weird, like I'm sure you experienced this. You end up feeling like you know this person, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have met this person one time before they passed, and now I feel like I can answer questions for them. So it's a really awkward feeling in that regard. But taking all that podcast, I was able to like condense it into an hour and a half of sound bites that I wanted, that matched the dialogues that I was having with other people throughout the film. So I put together a string out, and then there's just black spots because it's all podcast footage. So I knew I had to represent him somehow, and I didn't have enough archive footage of video to go over him. My original plan was actually to try to not reveal that he had passed until the end when that was my ending, and do a, kind of like what we did in a podcast studio. But we ended up finding a better ending and finding this in the middle that really helps out that ending. So I think where we landed is better, but we recreated him talking in a podcast studio where we didn't really show his face a lot. We did a lot of really kind of tricky camera moves that were around him talking into a mic, just to try again, not to, it's very sensitive when you're like, his mom is part of the film. Like his mom was at our private screening. Like I've talked to her, she's been interviewed, and like he has had such a profound effect on everyone that we've touched on the film, and that's where that legacy comes to play. So like you don't want to do anything where you're trying to, again, be exploitative, and I was really sensitive to that. So I felt like the method that we ended up going with was the least resistant path to get a creative solution without pushing boundaries to the point where it's going to become offensive or kitschy. And I think we landed in a pretty good spot. I feel good about it. After the first private screening with the cast and like the family and then some of the members of AIW, I didn't tell his mom that we were doing that part. And I was like, oh God, this is it. This is like, I was terrified, absolutely terrified. And she came up to me after the film and she's like, I want to watch this every day of my life. And ooh, it almost just got me right there. So it felt good. It felt good to like get it right.
And then Mariah and Mallory, you both have a little bit of participation in your film. So it's not on the outside watching people or getting interviews in directly. We have some people interacting as they're kind of navigating us as the audience through. Was there, I'm going to ask both of you, was there in a sense an intention to that from the get-go, or has it become something that felt more right as time went on? We'll go with Mallory and then Mariah.
It was definitely not our intention. So in this film, you'll see that Julie and Lester, who are the director and producer of the film, and they are bar patrons themselves. Like they, grew up at the bar, essentially, is how they would describe it. They came about this project because they were working on getting a historical marker placed outside the space where this bar once was. And it still holds a bar, it's just not this bar. And in doing this and in starting to piece together the reasoning for why it deserves a historical marker, they were like, oh, there's something to this, right? And so a lot of these interviews that we had, if you listen to the raw footage, it's almost like them reminiscing and piecing together, oh, what happened to so-and-so? How are they doing? Catching up with an old pal or, friends of friends. And so some of that was challenging, right, to your previous question, because it's like, okay, we need this to be important to people who never went to this bar. We need it to not just like be applicable to people who would also share in this collective reminiscence. We need other people to care as well. And so, but in putting together the film, we also realized, okay, we need somebody to explain this. We need somebody to connect these two dots that we didn't quite get from the sound bites. And so it was kind of a later decision to have Julie and Lester be in the film as kind of narrators in a way, but also like they're sharing their story and they're piecing together some of these connections that maybe we didn't get from the other interviewees. And I wouldn't say there was a reluctance to that, but it just wasn't something that they considered. And it was toward the end that we were like, no, we need this. And I think it really helps tie things together. And it makes sense because you hear all three of us asking questions in the back during the interviews. And so it helps to put a name to a face of, oh, that's who that is and why they're there, so.
Yeah, I think for us it was even like more so than intentional with me and my co-director and Ivy's niece also being in the film. It was sort of like inevitable because I think that with the original inspiration for the film was really based off of me interning at this production studio and all of these boxes coming in and me like not being able to resist looking in them and just digging through and finding this treasure trove of things. And so very quickly, I mean, it was like the end of my shift one day where I just had to like get all my thoughts out and I wrote this like essay that was really more of a diary entry at the time. And I shared it with Kat, who was my boss at the time and not my co-director. And she sort of like fell in love with my ramblings of how mind-blowing the experience was and how inspired I was by her friend who had just recently passed. And I think that my sort of raw anger and envy that I had that I didn't get to actually meet this person and I only had the pieces that were left was a lot of what was guiding the initial inklings of this film. And being able to then incorporate Ivy Young's niece, Jade, was really important to get a perspective from her family and another person that she loved, because, you know, like I said earlier, a lot of the times it's not up to us to feel important enough to keep a record of ourselves, and it's the people around us that love us and take us seriously and see us for our worth that do that. And Kat so beautifully did that for Ivy, and especially in her final years, just documenting that with her iPhone and being there for her at that time. And so I think that us being, you know, these kind of like guiding narrators throughout the film was really natural, because that's just really how it happened. And so the archive was this connective tissue that brought me and Kat together through this friend that Kat had just lost and I was just finding. So it was a perfect vehicle for us to be there in the film and bring the audience into that experience with us.
And bringing up the audience, we're now going to open up audience questions. So if you want to come up to the podium so everybody can hear you and ask questions of our fantastic filmmakers. They would like it, and I would feel much relieved if you did. Oh man, it's early in the morning. Oh yes!
The podium's intimidating for sure.
Hi, thanks for doing this. You're doing a great job. What you're doing right now is difficult, so you're doing a great job. I'm curious, you know, when you make a doc, you sort of have a plan how you think it's going to go, like, you know, from the beginning to the end. I'm curious, you know, sort of along the way, you have to make decisions that sort of take you off of the path that you thought you were on. I'm curious what each of you, how you approach those moments where you have to make a decision that you know isn't exactly what you planned on doing.
Anyone? Don't make me call. Oh, wait, this is not school. I can't make you call.
He's my producer, so he already knows my answer, but I can, I can certainly answer and start. My doc, as it is completely different than my initial idea of what it was going to be. I knew pieces of it. A lot of the pieces are the same, but as far as the overall theme, the overall tonality, where it landed, it's completely different, and it's because I was patient over those 7 years. Some would say I was patient. I tried to be patient, and I let stories develop in front of me, and that patience allowed me to kind of fall into some happy accidents of stories that were just right there, and I was like, well, I thought I was done, but I gotta do that part, because that part ties to this part, and this part, so it was one of those things. So I would say that mine is completely different than my initial thought of what it was going to be, while it still retains some of the essence of that.
Mine could have been entirely different because of the amount of information that we found, and it could have literally gone the route of all the fan letters and about how the public viewed him. It could have gone completely into legacy and shortened the amount of time that we spent on his life. But my original beat sheet had 2 acts of his life. First with him, how he got into the industry, etc. The second act was the tour in England and his unfortunate car accident. And the third act was always the legacy. But the thing that I found out very early on in my research was a quote in one of the books that was written about him by one of his hugest fans. And he wrote that Eddie said to his mother when they moved from Albert Lee, Minnesota to California when he was only 11, he left all of his friends behind, and all he had was a guitar, and he called his guitar his best friend. And the only other person that he was as close to was his mother. And he used to say to her, "Mum, I'm going to make a fortune," because they were worse than working class. And what he wanted to do was make his mum's life easier for her. So that emotional tie with his mother was always something. As a mother myself, I wanted to bring out in the film. So that was always tying the start to the middle to the end. So when you start to get dragged off on these routes with the fan letters, because I mean, I just loved the fan letters, you know, I couldn't read half the writing, I was trying to decide it. And these love letters from these girls when he was on tour, you know, SWALK on the back of the letters. It was just like, I really want to go down that route, and then you really want to go down the other. But I think the truth of the relationship and the beats was what I stuck to, but it could have easily have gone in a different direction. Another film could come out of it, you know?
Yeah. I think some of the unexpected things for us is, well, initially the direction of the film was much more abstract and dreamscapey, and it was about more of the concept of the archive than what it is that we found within it. And then once we let that go, it was like the floodgates came out, because then we were free to actually play with what was in it and lean into all the vibrancy. And like what you were saying, there's so many different like types of films that could have been made, and so finding a way to put it all together was super difficult, because at one point certain cuts were almost all about politics, you know? And then I'd be sitting there like, oh, but she had such great love letters, you know, like she had so many torrid affairs and lists and things that she had a rich life. And so then it was like, okay, so how do we bring that in? And she had all this poetry that was unreleased and no one had seen before, but she made her own little poetry book. And so incorporating her art and culture alongside the politics and her love life was a huge task, because we're like, are people going to want to see all of this in one? You know, like this is too many different types of movies. You know, it can't be an erotica and also like a concert, and you know, so it just felt really disparate at certain times. And then I guess once we finally leaned into the fact that this is how people are, you know, like we have all of these pieces and parts of us that we keep separate, but we kind of made a fun experiment of putting it all together like, you know, any person is. And the parts that seem really in contrast or incompatible with each other is how, you know, the good stuff, that's where it all comes from. So just embracing that and putting it all together and finding a way to make it flow was a super fun puzzle, I think.
Yeah, and I would say we had so many interviews, and earlier I said that, you know, there were a lot of people who didn't necessarily see the value in their stories, but there are also just as many, if not more, people who had such amazing, rich stories to tell, and at a certain point we can't make people sit through a 10-hour documentary, right? And so figuring out what's going to get cut and what's going to stay, of course, was where I think when we started on this project, we're like, yeah, we're going to make a film and it's going to be great. And we didn't necessarily have okay, this is our foreseen beginning, middle, and end. And as we were doing each interview, I would listen and be like, okay, that soundbite's going to connect there, that's going to connect there. But even still, we didn't have, until we brought in editors who, they were amazing, but they were like third party in the sense that they had not touched the project prior to this. They had not been patrons of the bar themselves, because so many people who had a hand in helping to bring this to life were personally impacted by this space in some way. And so I think it really took bringing in somebody who was just completely removed from the story, the place entirely, to have a more, you know, direct and just, you know, objective view on the situation, and that really helped make those decisions.
Great. Do we have other questions? Chidam.
This is so extremely compelling. My question is about distribution. Could you tell us a little bit about any strategy that you might have in place towards distribution? You know, what is the hope? What is the plan? What is the backup plan, if you can? Thank you.
We have a distributor attached that we can't announce at the moment. Was that easy to get? No. A lot of people were interested about the project, but documentaries, I don't know whether you know a lot about distribution of documentaries, but since the pandemic, they've had less value than they did beforehand, because there's a lot more of them out there, and also the rise of the short documentary as well. So distributors, not sales agents, but distributors are less keen to pay the right price for the documentary, and they do know you've got to pay for all the licensing and all the rest of it. but they'll not offer minimum guarantees or pre-sales on it. So that, in our instance, we've got an international star in our, Eddie Cochran is our film.
It sounds like you have a lot.
Yeah, so you'd think it would be easy, wouldn't you? We also, as a company, got a very good pedigree, you know, and that should help you too. This is not our first rodeo. Have we got good relationships with sales agents? Yes, really good relationships with sales agents. Have we got success in the documentary space? Yes. Ben and I have got huge success with Quant. We did the Quant documentary. We did the Ronnie Scott's documentary. So why aren't they falling at our feet? Why aren't they going, give me your Eddie Cochran documentary? It's going to be brilliant. And that is the point. They don't want to know about it. They'll track it. They'll look at it, but they don't want to put their money where their mouth is until they see the finished product. So you're creating something with all these bits that cost a lot of money, or you're getting so many things in kind and deferred fees and all the rest of it. That is ridiculous. And you literally do not know whether somebody wants to put it out there. You know that people want to watch it, but you've got to get into that space where people do want to watch it. So I think the festival circuit is essential to a good documentary for its distribution prospects. The distributor that we're with, they were like, well, yeah, you know, yeah, it's great, you get into these festivals, blah, 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 you know, like, but really we just want it now because we actually think it's really good and we want to get it out there in the marketplace, and because you're doing a bloody festival tour, we can't get it out there because it's got to have the festival tour. So
you're going to make Adam cry again.
Oh.
Living parallel lives right now.
Yeah, but it's and the problem you've then got is who's going to buy it then for the rest of the world, and the problem is the prices are low. So my advice to anybody who is doing a documentary is it is the strength of the end product that is going to get you the deals. And it's either, the hook is either going to be the subject matter, the genre it's in, and then they're still going to want to know, have you got any stars that are in it, and will they come to any premieres, and will they do this, and will they do that, and will they do the other? But there is still a market for documentaries, and I think documentaries that broach unusual subject matters or explore different ways of telling that story are still going to be very valuable out there, personally.
Adam, anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's upside down right now, and the value of documentaries has shifted dramatically in 3 years, and it's insane. Even since we started Substance, which is our production company, now we have 4 feature-length documentaries, a docuseries, and unscripted series. We're all trying to get distributed. We're finding that self-distro and alternate methods of getting out there are the way to go. So. Certainly with Slow Burn, we're doing the festival circuit, so we're premiering in Cleveland. It's a Cleveland story. It makes sense to premiere here. We're going to get the biggest pop for our dollar. And then from there, we're doing actually a road show. From that road show, we're actually doing marketing materials directed towards specific communities within the wrestling world, so then we can we can get it to generate outwards, because I do think this story transcends just a wrestling community, but I think the swell of excitement has to come from the wrestling community first. So we've got a very specific marketing package that we're going to go to streamers and YouTube streamers and podcasters and get it out to the community that way. And then, of course, we're keeping ourselves open to anyone who wants to buy. Which camera is it? We're certainly keeping ourselves open to that. We do have WWE superstars. We have AEW superstars. You would think it would make sense. But when we go and we talk to the Apples, we talk to the Netflixes, they're like, oh, wrestling? Is it about The Rock? Like, it's not about The Rock. So right now they just want that household name, and they want all access or true crime. If it's not one of those 3 things, they do not care about it in these bigger markets. So you really have to fight to try to generate your own interest and generate your own buzz and generate your own swell of support from a community. And then from there is where they start seeing, oh, there's money to be had here. So that's kind of our path right now.
All right, Mallory?
You said this is not your first rodeo. This is very much our first rodeo. And so I'm learning from you all, and we have dreams, but not a clear path just yet. I personally am flabbergasted that it is at the Cleveland International Film Festival, so like, shout out to this. But yeah, I'll keep you all posted as I learn more.
Well, echoing a lot of these sentiments, it's a weird time to be a doc. And I think that fame has always been the name of the game, and with our subject matter being someone deliberately who's unknown, kind of makes it a little bit tougher. I'm told there used to be a world where you could bring a story to someone, if you told it well, they could see the value in it, and they would bring it to the audience, and nowadays it's kind of flipped, and they want there to be an audience already for the story before they put it up. They want that guaranteed revenue. And so I think that alternative distribution structure is something that we're also really interested in. And more than anything, I feel like this film is a teaching tool. And so I think that public screenings and university events and things of that nature would be such a rich opportunity to bring this to people that are really interested in it. And we know there is an audience and people that would benefit from this story. And it's about bringing it to them and focusing on that impact more so than any of the wider models that are kind of harder to break into these days.
That's very much akin to our approach right now, too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just add one other thing. We're very close with the owner of Documentary Plus, who just recently acquired it, and his goal for Documentary Plus is to make Documentary Plus what ESPN is to sports, and what what's that horror channel? Shudder. What Shudder is to horror. So like he is like really pushing it in that direction. He's got a great rev share model. Like he is specifically focused only on these true human stories and whatnot. So like I think as I see what he's doing with that, I think it's going to be a very special place for documentaries, and I think it can be the place for us to have a home until the market changes again,
Right.
So it's going to change every 2 years right now. It's like completely different than it was 2 years prior. So once these dominoes fall, I think we're going to have a new landscape, and we'll see what happens. Certainly with the world of AI and what's happening there, I think these human-centric stories are going to become more imperative, and people are going to gravitate towards them, which is why I think a solution like a Doc Plus or someplace where these can all be so you can just have access to them will be very positive.
Other questions? Please.
Just had a question. How has shooting documentaries been self-reflective for each and every one of you?
What was that? Sorry.
How's it self-reflective?
Yes.
How's our documentary self-reflective?
The process, I think. That's what you're asking in terms of how's the process self-reflexive?
I'm sorry. So my thing is like, how has shooting documentaries been self-reflective for you
How's
guys?
it affected me?
How has it been reflective for you guys?
Reflective,
Like,
did he say?
yes. So like, what have you personally got out of shooting documentaries for you, yourself?
One, it's a hell of a long process. I think we'll all agree with that. You think the process of making a drama feature's long? Everybody goes, why is your film not finished yet? You filmed such and such ages ago. Well, I'm sorry, it's not finished yet. They don't realize how post-heavy it is. I think from what I gained from it was the absolute love that every single person that is either involved in the project or we spoke to with regard to the project or even did the grading or the sound on the project all fell in love with Eddie again. And that to me was the biggest tick in the box. And getting an email from the family, like you said, Adam, about what his mum said, like from his sister and niece saying that how much they absolutely loved it, and Cindy going, I really loved it and I don't like much, like that kind of comment. But I think you become, when you make a documentary as a director or cinematographer director, you become so immersed in the subject matter that unless you love it, you're going to have a really awful time because it's going to take over your life. And
There's a good chance even if you love it, you're going to have an awful time.
Yeah, you still are, because you're going to have to re-scrutinize and re-scrutinize and re-scrutinize. And it has to be a labor of love.
It has to be.
It really, really does. So I think from my personal point of view, I feel like I've had the gestation period of an elephant with this project. And last night when it had its world premiere, and we chose Cleveland as well, when they asked us, we were over the moon because the Rock Hall is here, which was so fitting for it. I was so nervous to show it to people that I didn't know or didn't even know Eddie. And because the only people who'd seen it were people who knew him. And I was so nervous last night. And then when people were going like that at the end, it's just like, thank God for that. 3.5 years has done it. You know, that's it. So tonight at the Rock Hall, it's pure celebration. Last night wasn't. It was just like, we've got to get this done and get
that anxiety
know that
bubble
people
that
want to
popped.
watch it. Yeah, exactly.
I would say the experience working on this film has changed me profoundly and has impacted me profoundly. You know, there were times during this film, because I moved to Columbus shortly after coming out, and I was, you know, excited to make Columbus my home, and this is where I'm going to be myself. And then the pandemic hit, and I really didn't get to do that. And that combined with the just general lack of third spaces, like I don't have a Jax or a Summit Station, which is the bar to go to. And there were times doing the interviews where I felt really like just bummed, because I'm like, here I am at the age that you are in these stories that you're telling, where you're having these like amazing experiences, and I'm here just living vicariously through you, and I'm not getting to have that experience myself. And then I had to stop and think about how cool it was that through doing this project, I'm not only getting to hear about Columbus's queer history and Ohio's queer history, but I'm getting to like befriend these people too. And so like I'm in a book club with a couple of the women who we met through this project, and I get invited to dinners with some of the people. And like, I know that's a little bit atypical of like a filmmaker and their subject, but that is what this film is it's all about the community. And as we said earlier, the legacy. And like, I just feel really, really incredibly lucky to have such great relationships with these people who I otherwise never would have known without this film.
Reflectively, like if you look back on, I think making a documentary, and there's different kinds of documentaries, we kind of established this, but like when I was entrenched with these people and I was learning their stories and I was trying to get these interviews, there's certainly peaks and there's valleys. And there's peaks where you're like, you get out of an interview and you're like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted, this is gonna be amazing. And then 6 months later, you're like, is this gonna suck? Like you have no idea, and like you're just, that self-doubt is always there, and you have to persevere through it, because if you let it win, like it will suck. So, and it is a passion of love. You can't get into one of these things without having a love for the story that you're trying to tell. That's the only way you're gonna get success out of it. If you're trying to do something that you think will get sold, or you think this, it's gonna fall flat. So I got into this because of the passion that I saw from the fan base and from the people that were doing this. Like these people get hurt on a daily basis just because they love doing it. And it's crazy to me. And I wanted to explore that. So my passion was because of their passion. So as long as I kept engaged with that and I kept reminding myself of that, my passion kept reigniting. But it is certainly peaks, it's certainly valleys, and you have to get through that self-doubt. I think it also made me a lot more empathetic, and I learned how to listen much better. Because you do sit down in these interviews and you want them to say something, you want them, but you have to let those interviews develop, you have to let those conversations happen naturally, and you have to let them take it where they think they need to take it because it's personal to them. And then that, again, alters what your trajectory was going to be based on what that is. So it's a lot of careful listening and then adapting to what you're hearing.
Yeah, I think for me, this was my first film that I made with a team, not like scrappy handmade student film doing everything yourself. And so I think that taught me a lot of really crucial lessons about, you know, patience and collaboration and what it means to really surrender yourself to a project that's so much bigger than you. And being able to feel a level of flow and flexibility with your ideas and your opinions and the notes that you have, and feeling that same sort of synergy with the people around you is such a hard groove to get into, but once you do, it's like magic. And you can't be married to any of your notions of what this film is going to look like, or it's this way or no way, because that's just not how films are made, you know? And I think that you know, I was in college when we started this, and I graduated now that we're finished. And so I feel like in a lot of ways I've kind of grown up making this film, which is a really cool experience and definitely very self-reflective. I think that, like, on a personal note, Ivy, the subject of the film, taught me so much with just in the way that she lived her life. And one of the lines that always stuck with me is in a list that she had of her, like, preferences for a future partner, one of the qualities is that she would have wisdom of the future past. And to me, that's this sentiment that really drives Ivy Young as a person and this film. That notion of living your life as not just a means to an end, but as a means to someone else's beginning. And I guess it's inspired me to continue cultivating my life and the art I make to serve a larger purpose beyond myself and not be so married to whatever it is that I want to tell, because that level of control is so hard to let go of. But letting it emerge and letting that teach you what future generations need, I think, has been the most powerful thing I took away.
Yeah. And with that clapping, we're going to come to a close. What I'd like you all to do is remind us what the name of your film is, when it's screening, and then if you want to kind of drop what you're working on next or now, that would be great too. We're going to go from the far end. We're going to work our way back. So,
all right.
Mariah.
My film is co-directed by Catherine Gund, and it is called And Again I Dream. It screens today at 4 o'clock at Cedar Lee Theater, I think. It's part of the Shorts program, so yeah, make sure to check it out. And up next, I'm actually working on a novel, so coming soon.
My film is Slow Burn Shoot, an indie wrestling story. It is, do I have to talk into a camera? Which one is? I know. Slow Burn Shoot, an indie wrestling story. It is premiering Monday, April 13th, which is in 2 days now, at 4:50 p.m. at the Ohio Theater. So we're super excited. It's our world premiere, and it's a big theater, so we're excited to pack it out. We've got a lot of excitement in town for it. My next project, I have several, because I run a company on the side, so this is like my side hustle doing films. But my son has a disease called neurofibromatosis, and there are some really interesting stories within that community in order to bring more awareness to that disease. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on, and we've got some production partners that we're talking to that have a lot of access and a lot of influence that are coming to the premiere, so hopefully they love it, my film, and then want to partner on this next one.
Our film is called Free Beer Tomorrow, and it is screening on Wednesday at 5 at the Ohio Theater. And as far as next projects go, this is a silly little project that I started when I turned 20. I've been recording a video a day, every day, which I know you can do with an app, but I I have some intentionality behind it and edit. And so I'm 28 now, and so I have to catch up in the one that I haven't edited last year, and then I have to do this year's. And so I have 3 more components that I have to edit, and then I hope to turn that into something more substantial at the end. So stay tuned for that.
My film's called Don't Forget Me, Lifetime of Legacy, about Eddie Cochran, the rock and roll singer who died in the UK in 1960, unfortunately. It had its world premiere last night, and it is got a special festival screening at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame tonight. And with Jack Harris, who plays Eddie, he's doing a couple of Eddie songs afterwards, which is super cool. I believe it's sold out, but if you want to go and you haven't got a ticket, please try and book it. We then go to LA on Sunday. It's opening the Beverly Hills Film Festival on Monday night at 6:10. So we're super excited for that as well. And then we've got a couple of festivals we're not allowed to tell anybody about thereafter. What's next on the agenda? I'm CEO of Goldfinch, and I'm also co-founder of Dreamtown with Ben, who's at the back there, my producer. We've got about 5 films that are coming up for the rest of this year. We specialize in Dreamtown, in elevated genre, horror. We've got 2 that we're shooting this year and another service production. We do service productions as well. And as for me as a director, Ben's making me do a choice between 2 at the moment, I think. One's a biopic about a famous musician and influencer before influencers happened, who comes from the UK. And the other's about a lady who was an amazing chef, a TV chef, who had an amazing thing happen to her and destroyed her. She was one of the first people to get cancelled in the 70s. So those 2 are running parallel at the moment. So just excited to get into whichever one it is that I do next. But thank you, Jim. Excellent panel. Thank you.
Thank you all. And I think we should thank them all because this has been the documentary. Now, I'm just going to stare awkwardly until I hear that we're out.
over here. All right, Elliot, go ahead and talk to me. All right.
Good coffee here too.
Nice.
It's pretty strong. I'm actually, it's like,
A little jittery.
yeah, a little jittery.
I know. I also
Kind of crashing
I
right
sort of
now.
haven't been drinking water this weekend, so I'm
Yeah.
too.
When is your film showing?
It's showing tomorrow at 7:45.
Okay.
And then Monday at 4:40.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's like a feature.
It's a short.
Short? Okay, it is a short. Cool.
Okay, so we'll
talk about all this.
Make sure you have the microphone like as close as you can.
Yeah, I'll just hold it up.
You'll hold it for us? Okay.
Yeah, just like that. If that
Cool.
works. Cool.
Whenever you guys are ready.
Great.
All right. Just good.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Elliot Lanzer, and I'm here with,
Simone Stadler.
And Rachel Gatewood.
and we are here at the CIFF Panels, hosted by FMA, Cleveland State University. I heard you guys had a film. Tell me about it.
Yeah, the film is called The Spanish Lesson. It's a short film that's part of the Shorts Block number 7. And it is a comedic drama about a down-on-her-luck tutor who finds herself surprisingly accosted by the husband of one of her students, accusing her of some salacious goings-on with his wife. And what starts as a conflict of pride and jealousy takes an unexpected turn and brings up questions about when to show compassion to strangers. And that's all I'll say on that. You'll have to come see it for the rest.
Great. And what was your role on this film?
I'm the writer and director.
Okay.
And I helped produce it.
Oh, exciting stuff. So have you gone to any screenings? What, out of the stuff that CIFF provides, what have you guys like taken advantage of, gone and seen, or either participated in?
Yeah, I've been here from the first day, so I went to the opening night screening, the Kenneth Cole documentary, and then I went to 4 screenings yesterday, so it's starting to all be a blur. One documentary, the like Godspell one, 2 shorts blocks, and then I saw Buddy last night. It's been awesome, like really great. And then I'm going to like panels and workshops today, more so. So I'm really just trying to like take it all in and take as much advantage as I can without completely burning myself out, and need to drink some water and eat.
Yeah, definitely, that's important. What about you?
Yeah, so we've been on the festival circuit for a while, but this is definitely our first Oscar qualifying film festival that we have been accepted into. So with all the panels, all of the questions that are happening after the films, we are just learning so much about what is possible. There's so many people who are like us and are scrappy and doing it for the first time here, but also people who have been here for a long time, who are very well established in their careers. And so to just be learning and in community with a bunch of different filmmakers at a bunch of different levels has been really exciting for us, and a really great learning opportunity, and just a great place to meet like-minded people as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we have, I think it's just one more panel left happening here very soon. So stay tuned for that. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. sports section.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. CSU student, I imagine?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, great.
All right, awesome. Hello, we are back. Oh, we're good? All good. Okay. My name's Elliot Lanzer once again, and I'm here with
Adam Wild.
And basically just, yeah, tell me about your experience being on the panel, who you know, what you've gotten out of the CIFF experience so far.
Great. Yeah, so far it's been fantastic. I was on the panel talking about documentaries. I have a documentary called Slow Burn Shoot, an indie wrestling story. It is premiering Monday at 4:50 p.m. So we're super stoked on that. Some other amazing documentary filmmakers were on the panel, and just to get their insights and to get their experiences, it's fantastic to be able to collaborate and trade war stories, so to speak, because documentary filmmaking is a difficult thing. It's time consuming, it's long, it's trying, you feel like a failure a lot, so like to kind of just have other people that you can lean on through that experience and talk with them, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, how long did your shoot span, or even just like pre-production to post? How long was that process for you for this documentary?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of pre-production, and then I shot for 7 years. So it was over the course of 7 years. It wasn't 7 years straight, but it was over the course of 7 years. So it was a long production. And like we were editing and then shooting while we were editing. You know, we were like picking up other storylines and pieces that we're kind of slotting in. So it was a long process. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we have one more panel coming up, hosted by Eric Seiler. So stay tuned for that. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Go see his film. Go see his film. When is it again?
Monday, Slow Burn Shoot, an indie wrestling story. It is Monday, April 13th at 4:50 p.m.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Cleveland International Film Festival Filmmakers Panel, hosted by Cleveland State University School of Film and Media Arts. My name is Eric Seiler, and I'm on the faculty here at the Film School. We're very pleased to be joined by 3 dynamic filmmakers for our panel, Impact, Making a Difference, One Camera at a Time. And joining us today, first, closest to me is Asia. Asia is the director of Beyond, and Asia Johnson. Next to Asia Johnson, we have Dion Johnson. Dion Johnson is the director of Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook. And next to Dion, we have Christy Chan. Christy is the director of Somewhere to Be. Hello, everyone. Good to see all you, and welcome.
How you doing? Thank you.
And so, if you haven't had a chance, they'll tell information about their films at the end, and I hope you all can get a chance to see the films. I've seen each one of their films, and I look forward to hopefully seeing all their films again. But I'll just start out with all 3 of you in general, just to give the audience an idea of what your films are about. Can you just tell everyone a synopsis of your film and why you made the film that you did? And I'll just start with you, Asia, and work our way down to Dion and Christy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Asia. The film that I co-directed alongside Michael Kleiman right there is called Beyond. Beyond is a film about men who are currently incarcerated in Sing Sing, who are on a healing journey, and they are healing themselves, participating in the healing of one another, and like the camaraderie and the build up to this event that they have every year called Beyond the Block, where they share stories, they share music, poetry, and the guests are loved ones, legislators, people who are invested in the criminal legal system, whether they are making laws or they have loved ones inside. And so we filmed inside of Sing Sing for about 3 to 4 months, documenting everything from day of audition all the way up to day of the performance. And then we took deeper dives on some of the guys' stories. This film is not about prison, it's about healing, it's about what it means to have the world see you in a box and to think outside that box, to imagine a world where you're not in that box, and to think beyond these prison gates that have caged you for so long for some of these guys. And I would say that I made this film, because it was an opportunity to work with my good friend Michael, who we had worked together in the past. We worked together on a short film with John Legend on bail. And then when he asked me to co-direct this piece with him, I couldn't help but think about my father, who was incarcerated before I was born, and he went in at the age of 23, and I just saw how, for lack of better words, like that tore him to pieces. And when he came home to a world that was not welcoming, that was not forgiving, that was not loving. And this film is my chance to like build a world where all of us are seeing how we are connected, and not just to the free people, but to people who are inside, to people who've been traumatized, to people who've society has said, like, you don't mean anything and you need to be relegated to this space forever. And Beyond is just this film that shares their joy, their dreams, and their hope to one day be free.
So, and why did you make the film?
I made the film to honor anybody who's ever felt invisible. And I know that I have felt that way. I myself was incarcerated at the same age that my dad went in, and it was more so about my dad than it was about me. But in college at Michigan, I know I'm in Ohio, I wanted to be a video music director. And once I stepped foot in that prison, I realized that yes, music and art is important, but more important are like the stories of those whose stories are not told, the stories of people who the world has said you don't matter. And I just want to live a life where I remind people every single day, whether they're famous or not, or free or not, that you do matter.
Wonderful, thank you. And Dion, tell us about the film and why you made it.
Yeah, sure. Let me begin by saying that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's the name of it again?
Beyond.
Beyond. Okay, so yeah.
We have to see each other's films.
Yeah,
All of us, yes.
We have to. Everybody go see Beyond, please, because I'm definitely gonna be there. That sounds, yeah, that sounds amazing. And what's interesting is I think there's a lot of common themes You know, our film is a little bit different, but there are some themes like we deal with, you know, incarceration, but we're focused more on literacy, the literacy aspect of it. But to tell you a little bit about my film, I'll talk about my film now, and then I'll ask you some more about yours later. But my film is Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook. Screening tomorrow morning at 9:45. Please come out. But yeah, basically the film is based on the fact that we are in the middle of an illiteracy crisis in this country that for generations has treated literacy not as a right, but as a gateway for power. So by tracing how literacy has been denied and reclaimed throughout American history, especially in the African American community, we expose the intentional barriers that are pretty much set up to deny agency and opportunity. So in this film, you'll see a lot of personal stories. Like I have family in the film. My mother is in the film, kind of telling a little bit about her story, historical story. We got pillars of the community in this film. We've got pastors. We have law enforcement in this film. We have business people. We have educators in this film. We have politicians, you know, mayors and county, city council. So we've got all these different voices in this film, lending their personal stories, lending their take on the topic. And we mix all of that with archival footage and we put it in an historical context. And through that, we show how literacy is a liberation tool. But I will end by saying this. More than anything, the film it's a call to action. It's a call to action for people to recognize literacy as the front line to freedom. It's a call to action just to get engaged with your families first, get engaged with your communities, and more than anything, it's a call to action to identify and stamp out any of these structures that still exist that would deny literacy for anyone. So that is, in a nutshell, Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook. Hope to see you guys there.
Okay, and you made it because you wanted to?
Yeah, why did I make it? I mean, it's kind of a loaded question, why I made it. I can't take credit for the initial idea for the film. I'm actually here at the festival with a couple of the executive producers of the film. So my company, I have a company with my wife, we co-run a company called J Media. We do all things media, book publishing, you know, film, video, photography, you name it, we do it. We've been working with this nonprofit for a while, and they do a lot of things in the community, and we kind of partner with them. So one thing that they do is they do a lot of things around literacy. So they realize we do film. You know, we've done a lot of other things with them, but they were like, you know, we do film, and they approached me and said, you know, we want to do this short documentary on the topic of literacy. And pretty much they just wanted to make sure that we touched upon the importance of literacy, maybe talk a little bit about just some historical figures like Frederick Douglass, if I can get it out, Maya Angelou, Ben Carson, a newer voice, Amanda Gorman, and they wanted it to be about 15 to 20 minutes. And for me, it was a no-brainer because literacy was always kind of a big deal for me. Like, you know, my mother's, like, she always kind of pushed literacy. So from being a little kid, that was important to me. So when they approached me, it was, oh, of course I will do this. As I started doing research and I started thinking back, you know, I started having a lot of questions kind of form in my head. I started thinking, okay, I remember Riff, maybe dating myself, reading is fundamental, and the conjunction junction, what's your function, the Schoolhouse Rock, right? You know, I'm just a bill, all of that stuff. You guys remember that? Well, maybe not, but I remember that, right? Being younger, and I remember hearing about the importance of literacy from a young age, and I remember hearing also about this literacy crisis from a young age. So I started kind of thinking, all right, the more research I did, the more I thought about it, we've been talking about an illiteracy crisis for about half a century now, 50 years, the same literacy crisis. So if everybody agrees that literacy is important and that we're in an illiteracy crisis, why does it still exist? Why have we not moved the needle on this thing? So I started digging more and more, and I started uncovering some things, and I went back to the executive producers, and I said, there's a lot more here than 15, 20 minutes. And I think people don't recognize, number one, the issue with the current illiteracy crisis, what it really means. And I think there's some things that people don't understand about why it exists. And I think that's the question that we need to zero in on. Why does it exist? And then once we understand that, then we can start to solve it. And I told them, listen, it's not going to cost you any extra. I will do what needs to be done. I will invest in this thing in whatever way I need to invest in it to make sure this story gets told. But if it's going to be impactful, it's got to be holistic. We've got to approach this thing from a holistic standpoint, and it's definitely got to be more than 15, 20 minutes. So that was kind of what was behind what turned into this full feature-length film on the topic.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, Christy?
Both these films sound amazing, and I can't wait to see them. My name is Christy Chan. I'm the writer-director of Somewhere to Be. Somewhere to Be is my love letter, my cinematic love letter to immigrant families and all families that have experienced discrimination. It's about a Chinese-American mother and daughter who pull up to a gas station in the 1980s, and they are refused service. Only instead of complying, the mother refuses to leave. So it's a short film, it's a narrative film, and it has fictionalized aspects, but it is based on emotional truths that I experienced growing up as a child in a very segregated part of the Southeast. Yeah, the film is from the point of view of an 8-year-old girl, and so it could be seen as a coming of, what the film industry likes to call a coming-of-age story of a child. But to me, it's really a coming-of-age story of our country, because these types of power dynamics are not new. They've been around forever. The way our country was founded was ingrained with colonizing power dynamics and white supremacy. But what I really enjoyed about having the opportunity to make this film was to tell the story from a child's point of view, and in a way that I hadn't grown up being told. I didn't grow up watching movies or seeing movies where you saw the immigrant family fighting back. I didn't grow up seeing movies where you saw Asian women being full, fierce characters. I didn't see the type of women I knew in real life in movies. So I wanted to make a film that felt emotionally honest, and would hopefully speak in a way that is not typically shown about an immigrant family. It is a dark comedy. There's tension and drama, but there's also joy in the resistance. So.
Oh, wonderful. And again, please try to see all the films if you here at the festival. I'll start with you, Dion. It's the same question to everyone. We're in a time in which there's legislation, executive orders to try to not have content like this out here. And all of your films were made recently, and knowing what's going on in the country, how did you develop your film knowing that there's this push not to have your voices expressed in terms of film? I mean, Dion, there's some states that probably won't even show your film too with this push now. So I'll start with you. How did you develop this film knowing how things are developing in this country?
Excellent question. Excellent question. I think I developed it with my eyes wide open, understanding what it was that I was doing, and I guess really the position that I may have been putting myself in. Because I do contracting for DOW, contracting, so I know doing this type of film in that type of work could actually put my head on the chopping block. So, but to me, there's a time where, you got to stand up for something. I mean, you have to stand up for something. I mean, that's what we need people to do, to stop worrying about, what's going to happen, and you just have to stand up for what you believe in. So You know, it's interesting. We started before the current administration was elected and took power. So I was actually oddly concerned about how the film would land if the current president didn't get elected, if the other candidate won, because I naively actually thought that the other candidate had a chance to win. So I thought, you know, people would look and see that she won and they wouldn't recognize that there's still an underlying problem. So that was my concern. But then, you know, once the results came out that came out, I said, well, this actually works for the message of the film, because now people will really be able to understand and look at the message of the film for what it is. So to me, for this film, it actually worked out that I could, you know, pull from some of the things that were happening and help people to understand this issue based on some of the things that are actually happening in real time in this country, and how we could tie that to some things that were happening in history, which was critical. So, and that's one of the things I try to do in this film. So we go back, we look at the history, and then, you know, there's anti-literacy laws that existed in history, right? So there's no secret. They tell you point blank, we don't want people to read, because if they read, we can't control them. It was all laid out there, right? So that was easy. So now what we have to do is we have to slowly bring that up to what it looks like today to help people understand. So to answer your question, the things that are happening, I think, kind of helped to make the message a little plainer.
Yeah, your film is a response to
yes,
that.
Yes.
Very good. And Christy, what about you? Knowing what's going on in the world and the country?
I mean, I'm sure everyone in this room has heard the word no said to them frequently. My relationship to the word no, whether spoken or as a messaging from our culture, has changed a lot over the past 3 decades of my creative work. In 2019, a different project I did from this film, a public art project, was censored. In the current administration, it was the first time they were in power when I experienced this censorship. And just to paint a picture, in the United States, less than 1% of public art commission funding goes to women of color. But in 2019, the year my project, which was about representation of immigrant voices and BIPOC voices, the year my public art project was censored, 85% of censored projects were by women of color. So those odds, you know, put together, that's not a coincidence. So, you know, I think for me, in a strange way, even though it can be traumatic to feel silenced or harassed, or to feel in some sense overpowered or even bullied by cultural and political forces, for me, after that censorship happened, it was like, okay, the gloves are off. I have nothing to lose. If I'm gonna do this project that was meant to uplift communities and was seen as very positive by most people who saw it and broke public art records, if I'm gonna do that kind of work and still get censored, then I have nothing to lose. I will appoint myself completely free of the people's no's, of the people who say no. And even though it was traumatic at the time, in a weird way, I think it might have been a good thing that happened, because I used to have this question in my mind: how do I balance how I talk about my work or make my work so that I can make it? And after that happened, I realized, you know what, I have no control over that. You can, you know, and even the history of this culture, of our country, each time the progressive movements have tried to meet fascism halfway, fascism does not come halfway. Fascism just keeps moving further towards fascism and white supremacy. So, so I think I decided there was nothing to lose, and this film, in a way, is in some ways me coming back from that experience. That experience happened in 2019. For about a year and a half after the experience, I felt very numbed and unsure how to move ahead as an artist in a long-term way. And then I started working on this short film actively in about 2021, 2022. And I'll mention that my short film is part of a longer feature film, to which I've also heard many, many no's. Like, this film should not get made. Why are you making this film? Why is an Asian woman making a film about white supremacy? This doesn't make sense, you know? I've actually turned down funders for the feature film because they've looked at the film and said, I will fund this if you make the family not Asian. And so, you know, perhaps some overlap with what you were saying, Dion. I think it's really important to keep listening to yourself, listening to your own community, and knowing what is true on a soul level of what you're doing, and not, for me, I don't worry too much about the market. I don't even worry too much about the gatekeepers. I know that my time on this planet as a human is short. My time as an artist is limited. And I just really want to leave behind something that's going to speak truth and mean something to people. So to me, I could hear 1,000 no's. I could hear a no from the freaking president of the United States. But the yes that I feel within my own community, the yeses I feel within the potential audience, that is the yes that matters. That is the voice that matters.
Well said, well said. And Asia, what about you?
I identify with almost everything, literally everything you said, Christy, about, so co-directing with Michael and I, I'm like the forever optimist, like, oh yes, and everybody's gonna tell us yes. And Michael's like, let me just prepare you, because he's done feature-length film. This is my first feature, this is his third. He's like, people are gonna say no. And I'm like, well, I have a middle finger for everybody who's gonna tell us no, and I'm gonna find a way. And in our relationship, like, I'm the one like ready to fight, because for what is right, for standing up, like you said, for your people, for your community. And that's one of the things that, like, co-directing alongside Michael has been it's been so beautiful, because we both care so deeply about people and about the stigma that people who've, even whether you've been imprisoned or incarcerated or not, like, if you've ever made a mistake, no one wants to be held accountable for that one mistake for the rest of their life. If you got into a fight with your wife and you said some mean things, and like 30 years later, like, well, remember when you said that thing to your wife? Like, we remember that. And also, I know we all know that the United States incarcerates more people than any other country in the world. And that is something that I fight against and want to change. And so when you ask, like, the state of the world, I'm like, it's more important than ever to make the films that we're making right now. It's more important than ever to stand up for what we believe, and equality and justice, and making sure that people are getting the things that they need. And I don't care if the president is saying, I don't care what he says. It's about what your community, like you said, what your audience, what your community, what your people are saying on the ground. Because the people in the ivory towers, yes, they oftentimes control the money, and they oftentimes control whether your film gets funded or not. I am always willing to tell a funder no. Like, if you want me to make these changes, or if I know I deserved something, this film deserved something and it didn't get it, but you want to give us crumbs, I can go find something better. And I think that that's really important, to be able to say no, and when somebody tells you no, to be able to fight back and say, your no doesn't mean much, and this is why. And so I've become less and less pragmatic, and I think that could be a bad thing, but I'm also more of a fighter now for not just what I believe is right, but for people who I know don't have the resources or the luxury or the wherewithal right now to stand up for what they believe, and to stand up for their own stories, and to be the curator of their own story. And so if I have to, like, continue putting pennies together to make these films and saying F philanthropy, I'm gonna make it work on my own, and Michael and I, like, just being the little train, the little engine that could with Beyond, like, it's worth it, because I know that the communities that we're affecting and impacting are going to be the ones to affect real change eventually.
Wonderful. Well said, all of you. For the next question, I'll start with Christy. It's kind of a loaded question, but still, think about this. Who is the antagonist in each of your films? And you can label who you think is the antagonist, but Christy, with your film, I want you to go beyond the owner of the gas station. It was more than just that person as being the antagonist. Who do you consider the antagonist?
I often think about things in terms of larger systems and structures, and in the types of films that I make, each character is a representation or an amalgamation of many characters, of many periods of time. So even though the character in this film exists in 1985 at a gas station, he could actually be almost anyone. The white gas station owner, he could be almost anyone in America. And he learned, and this character, even though we don't tell his side of the story, he probably grew up in an environment where he inherited his white privilege, inherited his proclivity towards violence. And he's a certain, as represented by the actor, he's a certain age, but he could be any age. And so, it's, in terms of the antagonist, I think what I hope people can take away is that these things are complex. It's not just about one person. And it's about what produced that person. And in a way, sitting here in the year 2026, we have all inherited things that happened hundreds of years ago. And we've all been, to this day, assigned roles to play in terms of, are you this person? Are you this person? And I know that as an Asian American, I feel like I've constantly been assigned the role of a minority, the role of silence, the role of compliance. And I refuse those roles. And so I think all of us have an opportunity to say, okay, based on our country's history, this is the role I'm being assigned, but do I want this role? Can I refuse this role? Can I refuse to be whether you're considered the victim or the antagonist, can I refuse this role and make something new? Can I contribute to something new? Just like there is, in a film, the role of an antagonist. In a film, sometimes there is a role of a protagonist. And what I find sometimes just in my journey of filmmaking is when I present an Asian American character in a film role, sometimes people also want to see trauma porn, victim porn. And I also refuse to do that. So if you all decide to go see this movie about essentially a segregated culture producing a power dynamic in a film setting, bear in mind, you may not be getting the trauma porn you're used to seeing. So it's a really interesting and rich question, because to me it speaks to the bigger question of how do we want to see ourselves? Do we have power over how our systems keep continuing and assigning these roles? And I think we do. And I think things are actually, despite who's in power, despite the way the arts is being defunded, I think every artist, every audience person, every person in this country does have the power to help redefine what these assigned scripts are in our lives, in our day-to-day lives, in our art forms.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'll come on down here. Asia, who do you consider the antagonist?
I think that is a question that I want the audience to grapple with at the end of Beyond. I'm very sure that these guys in this film are the heroes, but I want people, the heroes of their own story, and just the courage that it took to show up and share with strangers every single day for months, to talk about their childhood, to talk about what went wrong in their lives, or to critique a system that they're living under and living in, knowing that there is an officer right outside the door and they're talking about how horrible the conditions are, how horrible the prison is, or how they feel dehumanized every single day. And that took, on their part, I just cannot, I can't wrap my mind around the courage that it took every day to show up and to be strong and vulnerable at the same time. Like, they were so soft. And you don't think about softness when you think about men who are incarcerated. You don't think about their tears. You don't think about them missing their moms or their children. And so when you ask who the antagonist is, I challenge like the audience to walk away from Beyond and ask why does the United States incarcerate these people for sometimes their entire lives? People are dying in jails and prisons across the country. And I don't want to be the one to tell, like, this is why and this is who's the bad guy. I want people to walk away and think about that, and not just think about it, but then do something.
That's excellent, excellent. Yeah, leave it to the audience.
Yeah.
Dion, who do you consider the antagonist in your film?
Perfect segue, as a matter of fact, because you know, you said that you don't want to try to answer the question of why. My film actually seeks to try to answer the question why that is. And the antagonist behind that would be basically the power structures, you know, the systemic power structures, the top wage earners, the political elite. And I know these are buzzwords, but you know, that's what it is. And one thing about that, when you have that type of means, those types of means that they have, it's not difficult for them to follow a common playbook to try to keep that power and those means. And so that's why they are the antagonists pretty much of this story. Well, I'm not going to get too much. You definitely got to see the film, but I mean, I just see a lot of common threads. I see a lot of common threads in all these films. The only thing I would add to that, it's easy, I think, to see my film and you may think that the antagonist would be like, you know, white supremacy or something like that, but it's not. It's exactly what I said, like it's those power structures. Like I'll give you an example. One thing that I actually didn't get a chance to talk much about in the film, an example, Bacon's Rebellion. I don't know how many people have heard of Bacon's Rebellion, but basically it was a rebellion, you know, a few hundred years ago where the slave population, the African-American population, and the working class whites got together. Now, in full disclosure, it wasn't great for the Native Americans, but that's a whole different topic. But they got together because basically they looked at the establishment, the power structure, and said, yeah, there's some stuff that's happening here we don't like. It's affecting all of us. And they realized it was affecting all of them. And they got together and, you know, they were giving that power structure to business. I mean, they were giving it to them. I think somebody ended up dying, it ended up dying down, and then the power structure got together and they said, no, this is a problem. We can't have, because they look at themselves as the true minority that needs to be protected, because there's only a handful of these rich and powerful people in the political establishment. There's a handful of them. They see themselves as the minority that needs to be protected. And they saw that all of the population was getting together and was overpowering them. And they said, no, we have to do something about this. And then that's when they started setting out all of these different structures. They created the concept of race that we know today, because before then it didn't exist. They created this concept of race to kind of keep people separate. They started giving like the working class whites a little bit more, you know, cachet. So now they felt like, okay, we're better than, you know, the African American slaves. So it kept the population from getting together. So, you know, white supremacy, obviously, it is a thing. It's a, you know, it's a problem. There's white privilege, but really the real antagonist in all of this is the power structure that set up all these different things to stay in power and keep the general population suppressed.
Excellent, excellent, all of you. We're going to open up in a few minutes for questions, but what I want to know is you've had a chance to sit back, relax, look at the film, have it screened at festivals and get responses and so forth. And as filmmakers, you say to yourself, wow, I wish I had done this, I had done that. Now, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently in your films to make a stronger impact? Would you spend time more on a certain subject, explore a different theme, do another rewrite? What would you do differently now that you had a chance to reflect? I'll start with you, Asia. We'll work our way down.
I think I wish our collective attention spans were like longer. I feel like they get shorter and shorter because of social media and just like the busyness of our lives. There are so many rabbit holes that we could have went down as it relates to mass incarceration in our film, but then our film would have been 8 hours long. And so, and no one's gonna sit in a movie theater for 8 hours. So I think that's my only, and that's not a critique of our film, I think it's a critique of like Americans' attention spans. And I'm complicit in that for sure. I think we did what we could within the confines of an institution, and we tried to make it as powerful and impactful as we could with the, like going into a prison. First of all, I can't believe they let me in, because I'm like, I want to burn all this down. But going into a prison, just without a camera crew is difficult. But now you're bringing in a camera crew and you're saying like, we want to hear from these men and we want to hear their stories. And I was in Michigan. I live in LA now, but I'm from Michigan, like I said. And in Michigan, they would never let a camera crew in any of their prisons. And so in New York, I do think that for as long as prisons exist, New York is really trying to do it right. You can't do prison right. You can't do prison right. But they try to have some sort of transparency and freedom for people to come in and see what's actually happening inside. And so I'm not, grateful is the wrong word, because again, burning it all down. But I am happy that Michael and I were given so much access to the prison and to the people who are unfortunately live there. And there's nothing I don't think I would have done differently except give more background on the evolution of mass incarceration. We touched briefly on like the crack epidemic and how in the 80s, like they were really like locking up black people. And there was such a big difference between, and the super predator myth and locking kids up, 16, 15-year-old kids and throwing away the key. And so I wish we could have like dug deeper, but again, we couldn't, because we'd still be sitting here for a week. So, yeah.
To be continued.
To be continued.
Dion.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta agree. She kind of stole my answer, because, you know, I would like to say that I would do something different. I think it's always good to, you know, have self-reflection and be able to say, you know, I wish I had done this, but I think given the confines of, you know, what we had to work with, I think the film came together pretty well. You know, given the budget, given the time, you know, all the different constraints. So given all of that, I don't know that I would do anything different. What I would like to see happen after this is, again, just kind of continuing the story. Because one of the things I set out to do in the film, there's this concept of an illiteracy playbook that's laid out. So if you watch the film and you pay attention, you will actually see that there are 3 different areas that are identified in the playbook. This film really only tackles one area. It tackles the denying literacy part, because that is the focus point, you know, literacy. But it also talks about creating division as one leg and controlling the narrative as another leg. So we talk a little bit about the division and the narrative, but we don't get in depth because we needed to focus in, because like you said, if we did everything, you know, you've got a docu-series at this point. It's not just a documentary, and we were doing a documentary. So what I would like to see happen is we go on and we tackle some of these different elements of this illiteracy playbook. But again, given the constraints that we had, I feel pretty good about, you know, what was done.
Great. Okay, Christy?
Yeah, similar. I can't imagine that we would have done much differently. We really took our time with this short. It took about 3 years to make, and so there were lots of pauses that took place to get things right, and I just tried to trust that it was good to take those pauses and take our time. I think if there were any regret, I would have. I mean, and the whole team just did such an incredible job. The way the alchemy of our film was incredible. I guess if I would have one tiny regret, and I don't even know if it's a regret, but because it's all part of peeling the onion of the project, right? Is when we were first working on the edit, you know, there's this thing called demo love, where the song you put in as a placeholder becomes the thing you fall in love with. And I kind of fell in love with the Prince song that we had in as a placeholder. And we did actually try to get it. And then we, you know, for all the reasons we probably know, we couldn't get it, but we did make inroads. And then we tried to get another pop song. And then eventually I gave up on having an 80s pop song. And we found something else that worked. But I don't know, I think it was still part of the process. Sometimes as a maker, you just have to explore the thing you're drawn to and address it, because otherwise it'll just be like this little itch that that is unscratched. So I guess that's a non-regret, but it is something that like took a while. And but no, I'm just super proud of how it turned out. And I think it's worth mentioning that the 8-year-old actor who was in the film had never acted before. And the film is in both English and Mandarin Chinese, and she learned Chinese to take that role. She is a little girl who lives in Berkeley, California, and her parents had tutors for her, and she learned Chinese for the role. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
One more question before I have the audience ask questions, and I'll start with you, Dion. What was the aha moment in each of your films? Whether it was through a particular day on set, doing editing, doing research, he says, this is why I'm doing the film. And what can you recount a particular moment or a day in which you were working on this film and you said to yourself, this is why I'm doing this film? An example.
I think there's two moments that stick out to me. One moment when I was doing the interviews, there was a pastor that I was interviewing, Pastor Whitlock. So he's a pastor of a church in Maryland, and you know, all the interviewees I think were pretty good, but you know, I asked him a question, and he just went in, like he has so much passion with his responses. Like he came ready. When I tell you he came ready, he was ready. He had so much passion. And you know, after I asked that first question, and you know, he just kind of went in, and you know, I didn't have to, you know, prod and pull. And after he got finished with the first answer, I just I sat back, I turned around, I looked at the rest of the crew. I was like, I mean, this was it. So I mean, that was kind of an aha moment for me, because you know, just that passion that he spoke with, the things that he actually brought out in the film, that you know, I didn't have to try to bring out. It was like, this is what I'm looking for. Like, this is the message. This is, and it's coming from the people that it needs to come from. Like, it's not me. It's not, you know, a single person narrating. Like, these people, these voices are coming together. So that was the aha moment, when all of these voices, especially, you know, him, but all of these voices kind of started to come together and started to form, you know, the key narratives of the film. So, you know, that let me know that, no, we really have something here. I think the second moment is probably getting a chance to interview my mother, because, you know, she was able to talk a lot about, you know, historically speaking, because we talk a little bit about the segregation time frame, and we were able to get access to her old school. It was a colored school. It used to be called Farmville Colored School. Then it was renamed to HB Suggs. So that's how I always knew it. And it's a historical site. And so we were able to get access to it. It's a community center now. But she went to that school as a high school. My uncles and aunts went to that school. When I came up, it was an elementary school. So I actually spent time and went to that school as an elementary school. My aunt taught there for decades, who also went to that school, not taught, but secretary there. When my kids came along, we would ship my kids down there to North Carolina to stay with their grandmother, and it was a community center, so they would go to community center programs down there. So we were able to get access and get in there and actually do some filming inside of that school. And so just being in there with all of that rich history and just knowing about the previous history as well of that school and what it meant to the community, and knowing what it's meant to my family, and being able to get in there and actually talk about that, and have my mother talk about how proud she was that it was still there. You know, that was also another moment where it kind of brought home this concept of community and the power that the community has, and what these schools and you know, all of this history means to the community. It's kind of like what you mentioned, Christy, about you know, not having this trauma porn, right? It's beyond the trauma of the situation. I mean, you want to recognize what's happening, but let's talk about how we get past that. And being in that moment, you actually feel, you know, the community. That's really that's how we get past. Like, we have everything that we need to solve these problems that we need to solve.
Well, great, great. And Christy, what moment did you experience that told you this is why I'm doing this film?
There are many aha moments. I guess one of the most memorable ones was the morning of the first day of our shoot. Everyone, we gathered the entire cast and crew in a circle before we started shooting. It was probably 6:30 in the morning, and the sun was just rising behind our location. And as we gathered in that circle, I realized, oh wow, we're all here to make this story happen. And it was just such a moment of like, and everyone had driven in from different places, and I had the realization that like, oh, it took, you know, it took us all a few hours to drive here, but it actually took me decades to get here, and you all are here to make it happen. And that was when I felt heard, in contrast to all the many no's, such a big yes. Like, I felt the yes in the whole space. And that was a really beautiful aha moment of like, yes, we were supposed to end up here.
End up here, great.
Yeah.
And Asia.
I have two. The first one, the audience that we were most excited and nervous about showing this film to were the guys in Sing Sing. And so when we screened it for them before we premiered at Doc NYC, before we went on the festival, we were like, we got to get their sign on. We have to get this greenlit by our guys. And so Michael and I are sitting in the back of the library in Sing Sing, and the guys who are featured in the film and guys who are not featured in the film, because we interviewed dozens of people. But of course, again, like, we can only make an hour and a half, 2-hour film, so everybody's stories are not seen. And so Michael and I were really nervous about, are people gonna be upset? Are they gonna ask us, why didn't you feature my interview? And we were really, really worried. And as they're watching the film, you see guys rubbing each other's backs, you see guys crying, guys in it, the guys featured and the guys not featured. And then at the end, this guy, John Rizzo, comes up to us, and we were most nervous about him, because when we would bring that camera into the prison, John would be ready, camera ready. And John's story did not make it into the final cut. And John comes up to us and he's like, I know I wasn't in it, but I was in it. I saw my brothers, I saw my people, and my stories in every one of those guys' stories. And like, sigh of relief for us. And then of course we got emotional. We were just so happy that every single person, from even the commissioner of docs, like, he got emotional watching it, to our guys who were most important. That was the first aha moment. And the second one is, as you see the credits roll, you'll see like, my line says like, for my dad, and Michael Kleinman says for my mom. I lost my dad when I was 11, and Michael lost his mom like before we started shooting, like a couple years ago. And to know that our parents would be so proud of us for making this film, and for like the heart that we put into it, that was another moment that I was just like, wow, we did this.
Yeah, it's things like that that keeps you going, and just it's worth more than just about anything, doing that. Well, great. Audience, we have a microphone here, so questions, I invite you to come up to the microphone and ask questions to our filmmakers. Questions for anyone? Questions? Well, I'm sorry, I want to put Michael on the spot. Michael, can you come up here to the microphone for a second? Michael Kleinman.
Get up here.
And people can join them too. And Michael, Asia, tell us exactly who Michael is and how he worked on the film.
Michael has a production company that focuses on like social justice issues, and Michael had been working with this organization called Hudson Link, who goes into the prisons. They go into New York prisons and offer university college courses, and Michael had been working with them for a long time. And Michael and I worked together on the John Legend project, and we just like the magic that happens when we work together is really, like, you can see it. And so when he called me, I live in LA, he lives in Milwaukee, but he's from New York, and we were shooting a film in New York. And so it was kind of like, how are we gonna do this? And I was like, I'm there, of course. And so we started this journey.
Oh, that's great. And Michael, can you just tell us briefly your response to the impact that this film has had, knowing that you worked hard on it and you're seeing the results of it? Just tell us your response on the impact that this film has had.
I think the impact, I mean, for me, it's just getting started, right? Making the thing was the vehicle to have the impact. So it started in that law library at Sing Sing, watching it with the guys. We right now we're showing the film in prisons around the country. We're showing it with legislators, governors. We got this letter. We screened the film. The first prison outside of Sing Sing was a Dominguez State Jail outside of San Antonio, Texas. And they screened it, and we got this letter that wasn't to us. It wasn't addressed to us. It was addressed to the guys in the film. And the guy who wrote it talked about how he had been in and out of prisons his whole life since he was in his teens. And watching the guys in the film gave him the courage to dig deeper into his heart and ask himself the questions that they were asking on screen. And they asked, a lot of the film is about digging to the root of your trauma and getting there so you can heal from it. But that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of time and healing. And he wrote about how he had never been able to do that. He'd avoided that for decades. And watching the film had pushed him to really start digging into his heart, have a conversation with his heart, as the guys say in the film. And to me, that kind of impact is amazing to see. I hope the film gets people out of prison. I hope the film gets our guys out of prison first, but I hope it leads to changes in sentencing that get people home from prison without having to spend their decades there. But yeah, I think we're just starting on the impact.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michael, for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
And we have another question here. Come on up.
One brave soul, huh?
Yeah, brave soul. Yeah, real brave. Hi, my name's Talib. I'm a co-founder of House of Wax and Filmology. We're making a mental health film as well called You. You all are making very emotionally taxing films. How was it on set? Just then the debrief of after making something that's not only is it emotional, but it's personal, because each of you are explaining where it's coming from, and that can be hard.
Okay. I guess all of you can answer. Who wants to jump in first? Christy?
Yeah. I think not just right after the production, but after so many phases, there is emotional labor involved, and I'm always curious how different filmmakers answer this question. I think for myself, I'm always trying to build in decompression time as part of the process. I don't see it as a bonus. I see it as part of what needs to happen. And fortunately, the community of support and funders that help bring my film to fruition also believe in that. So sometimes I schedule retreats. For the collaborators I work with, I it's one of the reasons it took a long time, was just pacing out how much time we had. And just, you know, small things like during the shoot and right after, I always make sure we have really good food on set, really, really good food, and people are well fed. And I think having just a thread of empathy for my collaborators and myself as we unpeel the story, that's something that guides me, because we can't just soldier through the process. There has to be humanity and grace in it, and so if I allow that to, you know, show up, then because I want people to show up as their whole selves when they work on a project, and they can't do that if there isn't time and you know, I mean, that is the eternal struggle, though, is to have enough time to feel a sense of spaciousness. So, and I strive to do that in each project, whether it's achieved or not.
Great, Dion?
So I guess during production itself, you know, it was largely interviews. I guess people were, you know, they expressed their thoughts and feelings on certain topics. I guess it wasn't super emotional. I think the emotion probably came in for me personally, because during the post-production time frame, you know, I was kind of losing my mother. You know, she was declining, and unfortunately, you know, she passed before we finished. I mean, it's been a while, so it's been, you know, over a year, so. Did not expect this.
But this is the debriefing now.
Yeah,
it's ongoing.
So, I mean, it's been it's been part of a Jesus Christ.
That's good. That's good.
It's been a healing process for me. I guess I do need a tissue. I did not expect this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, so it's been a healing, you know, process for me. So being able to kind of throw myself into finishing, you know, this project, and I think also just seeing when I was able to screen it with the executive producers, just kind of seeing their response as well, because you know the response was amazing. You know, they saw it, and then after it was over, they kind of looked at each other, and I was concerned at first, because I'm thinking, you know, what does that look about? And then they were just like, you know, did we just see what we just saw? And you know, so they kind of had this emotion like, wow, this is, you know, because they felt good, because they were the executive producers and they funded this thing. They're saying this is a powerful tool. So I think, you know, during that post-production phase and after post-production, I think that was where the emotion came in. So.
My worry, thank you for that. And losing a parent never gets easier. So it's been a year, and you said it's been a year, like it's been a long time, but in 5 years, this is gonna come up. So I know what it's like. So thank you for sharing that, and know your mom is super proud of you and proud of this film. My worry was never like, how am I gonna take care of myself after long days of shooting in the prison? My worry was always, how are the guys who just shared so vulnerably going to take care of themselves after? Because Michael and I get to go back to our hotels, we get to shower with the soap that we chose, we get to eat the food that we decided to eat that day, and the guys have to go back to these cells on the thing that they call a mattress, eat the food that has been chosen for them. We can decide to go to therapy, we can decide to go to the spa, we can, you know, do all these things if we make time to do them. And so, like, self-care is, as I'm talking, I'm like, I have a problem, like I don't take care of myself. But the guys, and for people who are inside who cannot engage in self-care on that level, like that's always at the forefront of my mind.
Okay. Great, well, thank you for that question. Yes, thank you.
Right,
Next.
yeah, thank you for breaking me down. I appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Kayla. I don't know if I'm supposed to introduce myself, but I know that you spoke about the impact of the film, and you guys have talked a little bit on it. I just want to know if you can speak more on like the personal and social impact of your films, but also if you've seen anything like structurally with where we're at today, or what you would hope to see come from the things that you have made, and just your thoughts on, because art is a resistance, kind of, because I think that is truly kind of what you guys are doing, and I think today it's really, I know you spoke about how important it was, but I guess I'm asking more about, since you are taking part in that, like what you've seen come out of what the work that you've put in, and your thoughts about art like being so important today.
Anyone? Start first.
We've seen, I don't want to give away the film, but like freedom is always the goal, and I think seeing people come home from prison is the impact that I'm most excited about, and it's happened. And I've heard the commissioner of docs in New York and people who make decisions on people's parole say like, this film is gonna free people. Mm-hmm. And not even just in New York, I think when other stakeholders in other states see it and they see the humanity behind the accusation or the charge or what's written down on paper, when they see past that, I think this film pushes people to think beyond whatever the charging document says. And so personally, I'm like, I want us to all be seen as, for the potential that we have, for the good that we do, and not for whatever poor choices or bad things or mistakes that we've made. And so for me personally, I don't even know if I'm answering your question at this point, but like freeing people is the thing that I want our film to do, and like we've seen it. We've seen it.
Great.
So yeah, I would say, you know, we're looking for this film to make a huge impact. Like, we want to form a movement around this film. Again, as I mentioned, we're working with a nonprofit organization. Like my wife has been doing a lot of work as well, putting on like these literacy events with them. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to build basically a movement around the film, alerting people, helping them to understand like not only the importance of literacy, but some of the obstacles that need to be faced, but what we need to do as a community. And the impact, or I would say the response has been amazing already. We screened first at the DC Independent Film Festival. We had a sold out crowd there. I was telling my fellow panelists at the beginning about that. So super proud about that. We were the only ones to sell out at that festival, and then we ended up taking top prize, the Best of Fest at that festival. So, you know, the wind is at our back there. But then just speaking with people after they screened the film, you know, the educators and the people in the criminal justice system, and just hearing them say, everyone needs to see this film. And, you know, speaking, like where I'm having some conversations now with some different educational systems, superintendents. My brother, who was a lieutenant in the New Jersey prison system, he was a corrections officer. So I'm trying to talk to him to see if we can get connected with, you know, some prisons and start to screen it with them. But ultimately, again, we're trying to build a movement around this film, and just based on the early responses, I feel confident, you know, that's something that we're going to be able to do.
Great. And Kristen?
I think with Somewhere to Be, what I hope for is that it can be, I mean, I want to see more. I think we only need more stories in the world, right? And I hope the film can help other people to tell their stories too, especially during this time when culturally we're being discouraged from telling certain stories, right? Or those stories are being falsely labeled as this word or that word, when it's just people telling the stories of what it's like for them to be human. Yeah, I'm not the first artist to say this, but you know, I believe that self-representation is a form of narrative justice. and narrative justice is a form of social justice. So I hope that when a few people sit in the audience of a theater and see this film, they might feel validated in telling their own story. Because what's really painful to watch right now is that we are in yet another peak phase of time where people are being encouraged to hide. People are being encouraged to be invisible, and we have to keep going. I know it's easier said than done. I'm sitting up here as a birthright citizen, right? But we can't, like, hiding the stories is not going to work. But I'm very optimistic that there's actually going to be a deluge of storytelling over the next few years in sharp contrast to what we're being told. I mean, artists don't listen, right? Filmmakers don't listen, activists don't listen, communities of colors don't listen to that kind of BS. So I actually feel very optimistic that there's going to be a deluge of stories in art and film. And I hope that my small film, in some small way, can be part of that deluge.
Great. Thank you for the question. Looks like we have time for just one last question, and come forward.
Hi, thanks. I wanted to talk about the intersection of documentary filmmaking with journalism and the importance of the First Amendment. And because we're in this, before this Cleveland audience, I wanted to mention a name that we lost during the pandemic of Mansfield Frazier, who is a local Cleveland icon. I don't know if he's well known outside of the Cleveland community, but in terms of Black icons in the community from here, he's up there with Carl Stokes and Stephanie Tubbs Jones as far as representing people from the community, marginalized people, incarcerated men who are trying to, readjust to life outside, things like that. And he was an independent journalist who reported for the Free Press. And we lost him during the pandemic, and I just wanted to touch briefly on the name of his name and other independent journalists to talk about how the importance of solidarity in the community, the importance of navigating your funding sources, and the importance of finding funding sources that are aligned with the spirit of the First Amendment and journalistic integrity and things like that, so that we can, rise all these stories up to make them a part of our cultural fabric. So.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, and all their stories are doing exactly that. As we're wrapping up here, can each of you tell us what's next for each of you? Do you have any future projects or screening at festivals? I start with you, Asia.
Okay, so come see it tomorrow. Come see Beyond tomorrow at 7:35. It's sold out, but don't let that deter you. I think they probably will have extra tickets. Or come Tuesday, and then we're screening across New York. We're going to Milwaukee, to the Milwaukee Film Festival. We're going to the American Black Film Festival at the end of May in Miami. And then we're continuing to go inside prisons and jails and schools and DA offices, and we're working on the second film right now about someone's first year home and what that looks like. I don't know if you all know anybody who's come home from incarceration, but it is not easy, and we know barriers to housing and employment, but also like things like navigating your love life or when do you tell someone that you spend time inside? How to get a driver's license, like all these things that we don't think about, this film is going to explore on a very deep level. And yeah, but come tomorrow, come see Beyond, for sure.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'll be there.
Thank you.
Yes, don't worry about that. But yeah, before you go see that one, come see Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook tomorrow morning at 9:45. We do have a Monday screening over at Cedar Lee. So that's on Monday, midday. But yeah, don't worry about that one right now. Just come out early tomorrow morning at 9:45 at the Ohio Theater. aside from that, what we're planning next, we are going to have just a short broadcast premiere at a local station in Maryland. That's for the community, to kind of honor our local community, because we do tackle a lot of local history as well. So did want to honor them and also become eligible for some broadcast awards. But on June 21st, we have our Greenbelt Red Carpet premiere, because we did get some funding from PG County. So again, that's to honor the community to do it there. So yeah, just trying to fill those seats up and get the community out big. It's going to be a big red carpet event. We're going to dress up. We're going to have a discussion panel. We're going to have an overall good time out there. So if you're in Maryland, Greenbelt area, feel free to come out and check that out. After that, we're moving into educational licensing and distribution. So we're having some discussions with some of the educational platforms now to use them as a vehicle to push the film out. Also discussion with various different school systems and just dealing with a lot of different contexts to try to get that pushed out. Probably won't look to do streaming, because I don't want to step on any of that work with streaming until maybe a year out. So next year we'll look to do streaming, but before that it's all about the community involvement, because again we're trying to build a movement around this around the film. So we want people to come out and see it and discuss it and come up with ideas. So that's what's next for this film. Beyond this film, we are working some pre-production on a couple of other films. One may involve some scuba diving. My son, who also worked on this film, he graduated last year from Full Sail in Florida. So he did some work, cam op and colorist. He's here at the festival as well, but he's checking out some other session right now, doing some networking and all of that. But he already actually has his scuba diving cert. We need another scuba diver. You need at least two. And he's like, come on, Dad, you got to get it. So I'm looking into it. I got to get my stamina up. I may try to get my scuba diving cert over the next few months and then work on that film. And then there's another film that we're sort of in pre-production on that deals with a DC legend. I don't want to say what his name is, because frankly, I'm surprised nobody's done a film on him yet. It amazes me every day that nobody, because the dude, he's a DC legend. People know him. He's still big in DC, but his story is amazing. So yeah, working some pre-production on that story.
Okay, great. Christy?
Well, what's next for the short film is it is screening in different festivals. It's screening right here in Cleveland tomorrow, Sunday, in the evening around, I think, either 6:30 or 7 as part of a shorts block. It's also screening on Monday at Cedar Lee around 2:15. It's going to be screening just within the next few weeks at the Dallas Film Festival, the Florida Film Festival, River Run in North Carolina, the DC Film Festival. It's screening at a few festivals in Europe too, so it'll be screening in festivals for a little while. We're also going to screen in schools throughout the country, so if you know of a school who would like to screen it, please reach out. And then in terms of what's next as far as work, I'm working on the feature-length version of the film, and the feature will have some of the same characters as a short film, and the premise will involve something that was inspired from real life, which was that when I was a child, the Ku Klux Klan used to send my family letters, and as a child I was instructed to write them back. And so for a little while it was like I was pen pals with, and my family didn't realize, because we were fairly new, my family was fairly new to the country, didn't realize who they were, because in the South traditionally, and they still do, the Klan has presented themselves as being a church and a Christian group. So as a child in real life, I thought I was writing letters back to a Christian group asking them to not harass us. So the feature film will be partially driven and inspired by that, but very, very fictionalized. And I'm going to take a lot of liberties in telling the story, and it will be a dark comedy. So that's what I'm working on next. I'm hoping to carve out some time. The word time has come up a lot during our discussion today, and part of it is it's always a challenge to find time, to make time. Part of making a story that is not necessarily, the expected familiar story is that the funding to work on the making of it does not just magically appear. So, but I'm going to do my very best to make the time to work on the feature along with juggling day jobs and things like that. So, and whether or not, people think this country is ready, I think we are.
Ready enough. Here all of you
Yeah.
come. Aja Johnson, Director of Beyond. Dion Johnson, Director of Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook. And Christy Chan, Director of Somewhere to Be. Can all of you join me in thanking them for being here today? And thank you all. I wish you all the best for continued success. Thank you to the audience for joining us, and thank you to our viewers for watching this. I'm Eric Seiler, and thank you and enjoy the festival. Thank you. Thank you.